Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Surgery podcast. I am your host, Nikki Clinch, and this is the episode coming out on the 30th of December, 2020. This is the last episode to be released of this monumental year that we have lived through, and we have lived through it. And so I was very reflective on what I wanted to release on this day. I wanted to share something with you that will help each one of you listeners to complete this year in as whole a way and in as a peaceful and healing way as you can, so that somehow we can make whole of what was the biggest, most unpredictable, certainly in my books, challenging years I don't think any of us would ever have imagined. And that we can make whole and peace of it. We can reflect on what were our challenges, what did we learn, what was our growth, what were the gifts. Why? So that we can complete and close. What do we need to release and forgive and leave it here so we don't bring it with us? And then what are our visions and our dreams moving forward? And I knew I wanted to sit and do this with the right person, someone I could go really deep with, someone I felt a deep bond with, someone who has just wisdom and integrity coming out of their pores. And so I can't wait to share with you the incredible Tamu Thomas, who sits with me. And we share in this episode what we have learnt, struggled through, what were our gifts, what were our challenges, what do we need to release and forgive. And then what are our visions? And so Tamu and I sit together and we make whole and we complete. And then we let go. And together we guide you guys to be able to do the same. Tamu is a somatic coach. She's an incredible entrepreneur. She helps so many people all over the world. She's just a soulful, rich, powerful, honest, heartfelt, authentic, just beautiful, incredible Black woman that I admire immensely. And the first time I met her, I just knew she was the real deal. So I can't wait for you to hear her, to hear us, and I hope you find it useful. Without further ado, let's go to the episode. Hi, Tamu.
Hi, Nikki. I am so delighted to be here with you, closing out the year.
Thank you so much for coming and sitting with me. It's really strange, I don't get this a lot with people, and I hope you don't think I'm weird and I'm, being all girl crush on you, because we've only ever really sat together twice. But I felt this just sort of crazy bond when I sat with you the last time, and I think it was in May, wasn't it? When we recorded your podcast.
I think it was June. I remember it was June because it was post George Floyd, and I remember thinking that I really wanted to speak to you at that time. And I remember, because I'm sure I edited the podcast the same day or the day afterwards, because I felt that it was really important for it to be out in a timely fashion. So yeah, it was.
I remember now, it was so synchronistic because we had moved the episode a few times, the schedule, and then all of a sudden it landed. It was like a few days after George Floyd's murder. And so we sat together. It was very raw. We were very open, and it was it was very medicinal, actually, certainly for me, to sit with you at that time and have that conversation. And then I just felt this real bond, and I knew I needed to sit with you again. And when I was thinking about, the fact that I was releasing an episode on the 30th of December at the end of this monumental year that I don't think anybody on the planet ever imagined would be the year that we lived through, I was like, what, how am I going to honor this? How do I make this sacred? And I knew I wanted to offer the listeners an opportunity to make whole and complete whatever was needed to make whole and complete of what we have experienced and what they have experienced in 2020, and how to reflect, honor, feel everything that needs to be felt, how to look at what we've learned and gained and been gifted, surprisingly. What do we need to release? And then what are our dreams and visions next? And I knew I needed to sit with someone that could go deep and be authentic with me. And that's why I asked you. And I'm so grateful to have you here.
I'm so honored. Thank you.
So before we go into this, how are you?
I am well. Yeah, the hesitance is just like, are you well? I'm well. I am well. I am real. And over October, September, October, the very beginning of November, I was exhausted. I was spiritually drained. I was physically drained. Every way I could possibly be drained, I was drained. And I started nonlinear movement training with Michaela Boehm.
She's been on the podcast. That's amazing. She's amazing.
I just love her. She's one of the people I have these people, and I think I would just like to spend the afternoon in your mind. I just want to spend time with the machinations of your mind and what you've got buried within.
I felt the same.
And that was such an experience that I was able to make contact with the fact that I am still experiencing burnout from almost 16 years of being a social worker.
Oh my God.
And we had to practice every day as part of our training. And I had such huge resistance, revelations, downloads, experiences. And we go into experiences, we may not realize it, and it may be secret, but we go into these experiences and we say we want to be whole, we want to experience whatever there is for us to experience. We say that we're open. We say that we're going to honor and we're going to listen to the language of our bodies. But because of the way we're conditioned, we're still running a ginormous unconscious script of control, of holding, of bracing.
Survival.
Big time survival.
Yes.
So doing the non-linear movement and actually allowing myself to be guided by my body without an agenda was really, really difficult. And the way that you move, the way that you are intimate with yourself physically, psychologically, emotionally, you can't help but contact things you didn't think were there.
Yes.
And what I contacted was the fact that I'm so used to holding and bracing so that I can be strong and so that I can manage life's difficulties, that I didn't realize that strength is so sophisticated that burnout shape-shifted and became more covert. And burnout was in my right thigh, like in my right hamstring. Burnout was, I had to look up my anatomy. And so I was like, I can feel my liver churning, like I can really feel it going. And I thought, oh, what do you know? You're not a biologist. You don't know. You don't even know where your liver is. Lo and behold, I do know where it is because I could feel it. I could feel all sorts, and I felt really massive waves of what I thought were grief. And as my exploration continued, it was grief enveloping rage.
Yeah, well, I was going to say to you, in Chinese medicine, the liver is all about suppressed voice, suppressed authentic voice. And if you have been heavily criticized, oppressed in your past, if you have swallowed your voice, then the liver just, the energy in the liver gets stagnant, and that is rage, and it needs to be released. Yeah. Oh.
So that experience of contacting the truth that was alive within me at that time, as opposed to the story of the truth, awakened me to the fact that I was tired.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about going to bed at whatever time and making sure I had the opportunity for however many hours of sleep and those sorts of things. It was a real, guess what, 360-degree rest that I needed. And that rest included me just being and reminding myself that my impulse, my instinct
Yes.
to get up and do something, my instinct to be productive, to be helpful, to be of service, because that's the one that tricks me the most. It's not necessarily the productivity, it's the being of service. Yes. Actually saying to myself, Tamu, we're going to hold the stare. We are going to ride this one out. And every time you think to yourself, come on, let's do it, you're going to offer yourself tenderness. You're going to offer yourself kindness. I've never had so many baths. I've never had so many baths. If the bath salts I like were on special offer, I was buying like 5 bags.
I get it. And you are so soaked that your skin has gone wrinkly, but you will bath again.
I will bath again. I will shower. I'm mindful about water use, but, I needed that water to smooth and soothe. I need, when I was a social worker working with families that had adopted small children, I would talk about things like baby wearing, so that you are, for me, it was like a replication of being in the womb. Yes. And also lots of baths. Yes. Because again, that's where we come from water. Yes. Even before we came from our mother's wombs, we were amoebas that came from water. Yes. So water was really important. And then I found myself going for weekend breaks every opportunity I could to St. Leonard's-on-Sea. My friends got an Airbnb, and I could literally, you can see the sea from the living room window. The sea is less than 5 minutes walk away. I really needed to be near water, and I really needed to move. We're what are we, 60, 70% water? Stagnant water is not healthy water. Water needs to move to keep the aliveness. And I just realized that actually the kind of rest I need, as much as it's the sleep and the mindfulness and all of that, is the rest of movement. Yes. It's the rest of things that reverberate in my body. I love the polyvagal theory, but it's the type of things that actually allow the vagus nerve to do what the vagus nerve does best. Yes. It's the type of things that helped me in a world of chaos and panic. I was able to be still within that chaos and panic and look for my glimmers and actually listen to my body. Listen, like I feel like my paternal grandmother is just showing up for me in all kinds of ways, and listen to her guidance, whether that's made up or not. I don't care. It works for me. Yes. So I had a period of restful, if there is such a thing, restful dark night of the soul. September and October was it. And it brought me to a place where I'm like, do you know what? Actually, I have no option but to grow into my authenticity, my truth, my knowing, because everything else I'm doing is making me play small, and actually holding back and playing small is far more painful than the other things I've endured in my life, actually.
Yes. As I'm listening to you, this is exactly, firstly, there's two things that I'm identifying with. One, this is exactly why I wanted to introduce this way to complete the year, because whatever
Mm,
we resist, whatever we don't face, whatever we're not willing to look head on at and honor and feel, we absorb, and it is imprinted in the pores of our being. And this year has been a big year, and if we turn away and hope that we could just leap into the next year and it's all gone, then that's delusional. And so part of ceremony is to face and honor and reflect and look and feel what has been, so that those pores that have been gripping can just start to let go and release and breathe, and the heart will open. And yes, it's probably painful to do that, but at the same time, it's what I hear from you is how much more painful is it to grip on for like 15 more years. And actually, as you're speaking, you've inspired me. I'm like, actually, at the end of this episode, I also want to invite the listeners to, once they finish this, to dance and then to get in the bath and soak. What a way to complete. Release, honor, reflect, feel, then
mhm,
move your
mhm,
body,
mhm,
and then
mhm,
get in the bath and soak. And that's one thing I feel inspired by listening to you. And then the other thing is what you're speaking, like, it makes me emotional, because that's what I need. I'm
mm,
I'm there
mm,
before the rest. So
mhm,
I'm at the exhausted phase,
mhm,
and I can just feel it. I can feel that I need to get my feet in the earth, and I need to not have to hold anybody, and I need to break down, and I need to cry
mhm,
and shout and wail and fall apart, and then soak and become soft and softer
mhm,
and softer again, because I can
mhm,
feel how much energy and courage it's taken to hold space this year. So, as you're speaking, I'm like, oh God, thank you for going before me and speaking what is the medicine. It is the medicine.
mhm. Absolutely. Even as you were speaking, I thought about the occasions where I've literally felt so tight. And then I've remembered things like I love when Tara Bruck does guided meditations, and she invites you to experience your forehead or your eyebrows as a smile. And I thought to myself, actually, in doing my body scan and contacting my body parts and inviting myself to soften, I thought that beautiful pelvic floor, actually, what would it be like to have my pelvic floor smile? So, something that I actively do is imagine my pelvic floor smiling. And as my visual of the pelvic floor smiling expands, my whole body softens with that. Our root, our creativity center. If that, in polyvagal theory, it says in order to be creative, we need to feel safe, and we feel safe when we're being
Yes.
creative. So if I'm allowing my pelvic floor to soften, to smile, I'm not having to grip, and I'm feeling rooted and safe, the possibilities for creativity are
Yes.
huge because I'm safe, I'm grounded, I'm connected, I'm
Yes.
settled. I'm able to really tune in to what is trying to emerge through me.
Yes. Yes.
And that's one of the practices that has been really affirming, connecting, reassuring. And it helped me to go full circle, 360 again, to actually, I became a social worker for a reason. I didn't just fall
Yeah.
into it. When I decided I wanted to be a social worker, I decided I wanted to be a social worker at the weekend. That Thursday, in my local newspaper, there was a half-page advert for trainee social workers. Those opportunities didn't come up very often. It was the only social work position I applied for, and I got the position and embarked on my training. So I know for sure that I became a social worker for a reason. The social work I wanted to do was not possible because the government is not set up that way. Actually, this right here, this that I am doing right now, is the social work I always wanted to do. And that connecting with my pelvic floor, allowing my pelvic floor to smile, allowing myself to experience safety inside my body, enabled me to decide. And I know that decide thing can be quite triggering. I remember when having a conversation with Lucy Sheridan years ago, and she was saying, like, you have to decide to be whatever it is you want to be. And I was so triggered. It's not as simple as deciding. But when I decided that actually within this well-being, wellness, coaching, whatever you want to call it, industry, the life coaching-y aspect of things, it's not just because I come from that background. It is my duty to be a social worker that
Yes.
coaches. So bearing in mind the fact that all of my strength, all of my toughness, all of that gripping, all of that bracing was built over years to protect a very sensitive being, I thought, well, I didn't think, let me be totally honest. I was
Mm-hmm.
overcome with the weight of being strong, that when I saw the glimmers of softness and tenderness and my sensitivity and what was
Mm-hmm.
possible when I
Mm-hmm.
allowed that to
Mm-hmm.
shine through, I thought, well, actually, that's the social work I need to be
Yes.
doing. And I need to actually recognize the fact that I am a sovereign being, and my sovereignty requires tenderness, gentleness. It needs 10,000 steps a day. It needs copious amount of baths. It needs chamomile tea. It needs tapping. It needs non-linear movement. It needs all of those things. It needs self hugs. It needs foot massages. I realized, oh, actually, the strategy kind of things, the system kind of things, those aren't actually what are going to help me to be the person that I am being assigned to be at this
Yes.
time. I need to actually let that all go. And then the non-linear movement and the other somatic practices helped me to integrate that, and that feels safe inside my
Yes.
body, so that I can now say, I'm no longer doing one-to-one work. I'm closing my membership group. I'm focusing on long term group
Beautiful.
work, because that is where I'm able to support people to make the transformation they want to make
Mm-hmm.
without, and this is the most important piece for me, without depleting myself.
Absolutely. So, following that, is this all what you learned this year? Okay, well,
Absolutely.
let's go into this then. So when you look at this year, whew,
Hmm.
when you look at this year, what were your biggest challenges personally? What were the biggest what challenged you, Tamu, or who you thought was Tamu? What challenged you the most this year? Why? And what did you learn from it?
What challenged me the most this year is, because it's a work in progress, trusting myself. Trusting, and I'm obsessed with the word sovereign at the moment, but trusting my
Yes.
sovereignty. So, what was really challenging for me at the beginning of lockdown was this: you've got a platform, you need to use it, your community needs you. And they weren't talk, like, when these conversations were happening, it wasn't about my community, as in my membership group and the people that were working with me, the wider community, the people that are on my mailing list, the people that I'm connected with on social media. You need to show up. This is an opportunity. People need you, and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, usually I would run without thinking and be the first person in the firing line of burnout and depletion to support other people. But there was a really persistent voice, and it was a very no,
I love that.
no, no, and it was, you are experiencing, at that time I hadn't even contacted the rage, you are experiencing grief. I'd also had a very surprising bereavement in January. You are experiencing grief. Let me tell you something. We're not doing all of that running. We are sitting in this grief. There's a phrase that I used to say very flippantly, but I say it with more meaning now. Excuse the colourful language. Shit is fertilizer. Now, if you allow yourself to sit in it so that you can see what is within, you are then able to transmute, alchemize, so that becomes potent fertilizer. There was a massive, great big call for me to sit in my shit and allow it to become fertile. So I was like, no, I'm not doing all of this. I'm not running around to offer everything. I've never been one to be offering all these free things. It just doesn't sit well with me. I used to say to my friend Nicola when I first started this work, people are going to think I jumped out of a cake. And I didn't jump out of a cake. I didn't jump out of a cake. I started my social work training in 2003. Coaching, mentoring, this personal development work is social work for people that actually want it. So for me to be giving stuff away for free and actually ramping people up so they start to feel like they're gaining something, and then saying, well, if you want the rest of it, you've got to pay for it or there's no more, that just doesn't sit very well with me. So I thought, this is time for me to be quiet. There are people out there that are providing services. They've got the capacity. I don't need to be one of those people. And that's when I thought, oh, okay, you're a hexagon trying to fit into a square. And it almost works. Almost. The sides fit in, but there are gaps around. And those gaps are where you're leaking your precious life source energy. That's why you're always depleted. That's why you don't feel rejuvenated and refreshed. So it was like, I am going to trust this. And I'm going to trust that actually, regardless of all the things I'm constantly learning, because I absolutely love learning, I've got enough within me to trust that whatever wants to emerge through me is going to be for the good of me and anybody else that comes into contact with me. And literally that's it, full stop. And it was about practicing trusting, practicing sitting down when everything within me, there were times like in my journaling, I noticed a distraction. All of a sudden I've got an itch. All of a sudden something's catching my eye. All of a sudden I've got a stomachache. And it really, really helped me start to take notice of all the ways my mind tried to disconnect from the intimacy of working in line with my body. So it was a really valuable lesson for me that I was able to notice that the distraction was trying to keep my mind and body separate. And that's when I started to have these, and at the same time I was doing my somatic coach training with a somatic school. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like my mind really believes, has been conditioned to believe that my body is its taxi. And when it starts to contact the body, my body, intimately, something tries to protect me from what's in there. And I know that we call it self-sabotage or feeling stuck. I know that my resistance to connecting with me becomes very, very acute when I'm on the cusp of growth. And my growth tends to be, I'm like a average-sized plant with massive, great, big burrowing roots. So a lot of my growth takes place under the surface. So people will say, oh my goodness, you did this really quickly. No, actually, the germination process takes quite some time. But I was really able to realize, oh, my mind thinks it's not in my body. My mind thinks it's actually separate. No, our minds are in our bodies. The body mind is a beautiful, complex, sophisticated ecosystem. And when I tune into my body, that's when things happen. And I say, oh, it was divine timing. That thing just seemed to have fallen into my lap. Oh, I'm really aligned. I am aligned. Gut, heart, brain are working in alignment, and my brain feels safe to allow the wisdom of my gut and the courage of my heart to channel through the brain. I don't even know what I've answered there, but I felt like it just...
I loved it. And it makes so much sense. And you know what? I can see it. Like, as I'm looking at you, I can actually see the evolution from when I sat with you in June to now. Like, you genuinely look like a bigger being. And well, maturation, here we are. You are the textbook example of the work, literally. No, I mean that. You genuinely look bigger.
I feel bigger. I'm not even going to pretend.
Your voice, your being, where you're speaking from, it feels like the anchor is down. Like, you feel matured. And I don't mean that condescendingly. I mean, like, I'm in awe. It's beautiful.
No, I receive it as it has been sent. Yes, thank you.
You know, I trust. Trust was a big lesson this year. I had a similar one, slightly different details, but my biggest challenge this year was to trust that I don't have to be like them. In fact, I'm not. And everybody, like,
boom.
You know, with all the polarization that's been going on constantly, I just keep getting barrages of people going, well, what do you think? What's your take? When are you going to speak? Da, 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 da. You need to stand up. You have to choose your side, pick your lane. And everything in me was going, no, be still. No, be quiet. No, sit, rest, listen. Like, when everyone else was noisy and the pull, and I'm not going to lie, there was a pull. And the pull was not from my power. The pull was from the little girl that didn't get fed and thought, if I don't speak now, I'm going to be left behind. And I had to sit with that pull in me and still honor this listening, which was, no, be still, listen. And when I found the courage to do that, I heard things like, you know, I don't fit in any of those lanes. I don't fit in any of those boxes. And I started to find this courage to speak things that didn't fit. You know, I've had the most interesting year in my business. When I look at my social media page, I'll speak one thing, and I'll have like 130 people unfollow me from that one post, and then 150 follow me like 20 seconds later. And it's been like that all year. Why? Because I'm not choosing a lane. And then what's that done to me? That's been teaching me how to just sit and trust my roots. Doesn't matter how noisy things get, how crazy things get. It's like, where can I speak from that feels totally authentic? And, you know, that has been the same lesson for me all year. You know, I wrote the book this year. Every project that's come out this year has had to come from there. And it felt like a risk. And I know what I had to risk was I had to risk the one that wanted to be liked and loved by the world. I had to risk her.
Hello.
She had to, it couldn't be about her, because that would be too limiting. And so similar to you, I had to start dropping deeper, much, much deeper, and trusting my body, trusting my being. Oh, gosh. But I have to say, you know, in that, it takes so much courage to go against the trauma response. It takes so much courage to go
Mm-hmm.
against, or not even against, to surrender into the part that wants to survive, to soften into the part that wants to grip. It takes so much courage, doesn't it? So I'm like
Mm-hmm.
you, like
Mm-hmm.
trust has come out of the biggest challenges and been the biggest gift. Trust in myself.
Mm-hmm. 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 Absolutely. And once you begin, so that resistance is like, you've taken a
Mm-hmm.
deep sea dive. You're quite deep. You can just about see the sun above the sea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm deep. I'm there. And then you look down, and all you see is continued darkness and continued darkness and continued darkness. And you're like, oh, damn it.
Yes.
That's where I've got to go. And in allowing yourself to go to that depth, you
Yes.
create freedom. And the mistake we make is believing that that has got to be full of suffering and pain and all of that stuff. And what I learnt through the trusting, through the keeping still, is that it is possible to go to those depths whilst retaining
Yes.
a sense of well being that
Yes.
allows you to go down even further. But you need what I needed anyway was not what I thought I needed. So where I thought I needed to be strong and brace myself, I needed to be soft and tender and malleable. Where I thought I needed to be clever, I needed to be curious. Where I thought I needed to be an expert, in fact, I needed to be a beginner. And that allowed me.
It is. It is.
Is your book called Surrender? It is, isn't it? And that allowed me to
Yeah.
surrender. And the things that I learnt in that surrender are that the biggest challenge I face, but I'm in a place of growing acceptance now, is that I'm
Yeah.
big. I'm huge.
Yes.
I'm ginormous. And I enjoy being big,
Yes.
huge, and ginormous. And trying to fit into
Yes.
a society that celebrates greatness but
Mm-hmm.
supports mediocrity is
Oh
painful.
my God, that is the truth. Oh, yes. Oh, this is why I love you. Like this is I knew it. Like like I knew it when I met you. Like you are big. And I knew it. And I'm big too. And it's like, whoa, hold on. Basically the paradigm that we've been existing in has not been created to support this bigness. And so it's time to smash that paradigm.
Can I
Yes.
get an amen? And you know what? People need to realize. So I'm going to go a bit biblical, and I don't know the story properly because I've never really paid that much attention to any specific religion. You can smash something down using all your might and massive, great big cleavers and whatever else. Or you can be like, I think it was the Israelites that were
Yes.
marching around the walls of Jericho consistently
Yes.
until the walls of Jericho crumbled. There is another way, people. And, for me, what I realize is that my strength is in my love, my strength is in my nurturing. I have so many conversations where the people I converse with within the wellness coaching space, my clients, people that are interested in working with me, where the descriptors used are descriptors that we would use for
Yes.
a satisfying meal. So much so that there was even one lady that said, "Oh my goodness, you're like food." If I'm like food, let me be like a nourishing, satiating meal
Yes.
that makes you
Yes.
feel full and alive. Not the Christmas stodgy dinner where you need to sleep it off. The fullness that makes you feel energized. And do you know what? I'm going to walk. I'm going to go for a long walk to be able to allow to support my digestion. That's what and it's going to be a leisurely walk. I don't have to run. I don't necessarily have to climb. I'm just going to go for a beautiful walk. Because what I am learning is that we often confine ourselves into tight spaces and expect growth to occur there. Changing your life for the rest of your life, designing a life that you would choose, requires time, requires space, requires tenderness. Because we cannot create the lives we want by using the systems that confined us in the first place. Audre Lorde says the master's tools won't dismantle the master's house. It's a similar vibe. You cannot use productivity metrics, let's say, to be able to support safety, creativity, and wholeness. Productivity is sympathetic nervous system. Creativity, wholeness, connection, intimacy, all of those things that make us the human mammals we are, is parasympathetic nervous system. It's ventral vagal. It's the beautiful stuff that separates us from our animal brothers and sisters.
I'm thinking as I'm listening to you, I had a meeting with my team last week, and I've got a new marketing team, and I presented something to them that I'm going to be doing this Christmas, and I warned them. And I said, what I'm about to tell you is going to challenge your marketing brain, but I'm telling you now to trust me. This is the most powerful thing I can do right now. And she goes, okay, I'm ready. And I said, I'm going to go completely blackout for the whole of December. And no one's going to hear a peep out of me. And I'm going to go silent. And I'm going to go still. And she was like, what? How can you do that? Like, what about the algorithms? What about the consistency? And I was like, the most honorable and powerful thing I can do is to rest and let go and not push. In fact, it takes more courage to do that than to keep pushing. And that's why I called the book Surrender. It takes more courage to let go, to step back, to soften, to dissolve, to be quiet, to rest, to go for the walk, to feed yourself the meal, than it does to survive.
And that surrender and softening, you don't know what on earth is going to be unearthed. The work, I've got to do this, I've got to churn this out. It creates a beautiful container for the stuff we don't want to make contact with. But also that container then becomes like an inferno of all that stuff just heat. Yeah, it might protect it from spilling out.
Yes.
But it's burning you up inside.
I can't hear anything anymore when it gets so busy and noisy. Like, and I have to admit, when this episode comes out, I'll be at the end of that whole month off. And as I'm speaking it, I haven't done it yet, but I have to admit, I'm scared to go into that unknown. It's the not knowing place. It's the place where nothing, there's no more form. If I go that silent and I let everything go, then I'm left with this nothing. And I've been there enough before to know that's where the fertility is. That's where the aliveness is. But of course that's also where you have to feel and be. And it's vulnerable and it's raw. But like you say, with the roots underneath the earth, that's the seed that's under the earth. It's dark down there. It's been dark, and so it's down there for a long time. It looks like nothing's happening, but wow, that's where everything's happening. So yeah, it's a vulnerable feeling to let go. So tell me, Tamu, what have been the biggest surprises for you this year?
The biggest surprises for me this year have been how much growth emerges from stillness. The way my business has grown this year, I would not have, I knew that was the way for me, but I didn't trust that knowing because everybody else including the people that I had chosen to support me, were fitting into this productivity mold, hypervisibility, churning out programs and things like a conveyor belt. You've got to do, you've got to do, you've got to be, you've got to be. So I didn't trust my knowing. Getting to a point where I was like, do you know what? I just can't. I'm full. This feels like, wow, wow, wow. It doesn't feel like anything that's supporting me. I need to let that go. The way my business grew, straight up with everybody listening to this, in June, when my membership swelled, I had a panic attack. I hadn't had the panic attack for years. And I had this experience feeling like I was about to die. It felt familiar, but I didn't know what it was. And I was like, oh my goodness, the excitement and the effervescence of that growth all became too much and overwhelming. My body had to try and shut it down the best way it knows how. So that has been one of the biggest learnings for me, that actually my growth actually occurs through stillness. The other one is that allowing myself to experience grief rather than trying to tidy it up and package it in a cute little bow that I can put neatly on a shelf somewhere. My grief provided me with so much nourishment. I actually started to feel safe to be intimate with myself and create a friendship with myself, which has resulted in some real difficulty. Friendship divorce, family members being really triggered, loads of things have happened as a result of that. It's like a shedding has occurred, but it needed to occur. And it's still painful. It still hurts. There are still moments where I'm like, maybe I should, if I transcended, and I just can't do it. Like, my body is like, you can think what you want. People pleasing is, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Abandoning yourself, we're not doing that. So the nourishment of grief and it opening the door. Eugene Genlin, who is the person that came up with the focusing method, which is used in lots of somatic work and psychotherapeutic practices, he talks about going to the murky edge of emotions and allowing my felt sense to allow me to contact and be present with the murky edge of my emotions has really taught me that I need what I need. And it's as simple as that. If I am in a position where I'm compromising my needs, I'm the only one that's responsible for that. No more saying things like, I gave my power away. You never give your power away. Your power is always within you. What we do is turn our backs on our power and outsource because we're looking for some kind of mothering that we didn't receive, but the power is always within us. If we can actually trust ourselves and turn inwards for that, then we give ourselves an endless regenerative ability. So there was the grief, the growth through stillness, and the one that has been like really profound for me. I don't have to justify my feelings. My feelings are my feelings, and that's that. And I didn't know this. As a social worker, and being a social worker really impacted how I saw myself and navigated my way through the world. You're constantly having to prove why your analysis is such, why your assessment is such, why you're making these recommendations. And essentially, as a social worker, you are observing human behavior and making decisions where you're pretty much playing God. So I got into this, no. I found a career that supported a childhood adaptation of justifying my feelings. And it's only now at 43 and almost a half that I'm like, my feelings are valid just as they are. And I trust that very rarely do I have feelings that are going to cause harm to somebody else. And I say very rarely because I'm not out here trying to be some perfect human being. Sometimes, one of the things I love about somatic coaching and somatic work is about leaning into the concept of non-violence. Sometimes we are violent. when we want people to do things the way we want them to do things because it fits in with the way that we want them to, that is an act of emotional violence. So there are times that I'm like, well, I know, and this is my way, this is how we should do things, where that is actually, for me, an act of violence. So that stuff but I observe it now, and I'm able to say, Tamu, do you know what you're doing? Yes, I know what I'm doing. Are we going to do this, or are we going to make a better choice? We're not going to make a better choice. I'm going to allow myself to have a messy moment, and next time I'm going to make a better choice. So it's just that as a human being, I don't have to squash down my feelings, and I don't have to shapeshift them because it fits into acceptability politics. I don't want to be acceptable. In fact, I've got a huge desire to be wild.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, it's so good to hear you. I love everything that you just shared. So what have been my biggest surprises this year? Again, similar. Yes.
Sorry, Nikki, I want to ask you, not the surprises, because I feel like there are loads of things you've always known that have come into fruition this year.
I started stepping into my elder. And I had moments this year where I actually could feel my grandmother's energy in my pores. There was a moment this year when I shared about it on the podcast, when I really started re-embodying that I'm a brown woman and my roots, and dissolving more of this white conditioning, and really feeling and being with the shame that I've carried around that, and that my mother carried and my grandmother carried. And it still gets me emotional talking about it. In that moment, and I say moment, but it was over a period of weeks and a month, something started to land so deeply for me. The word embodiment is how I would want to speak it. And I feel like I began embodying myself in a way I've never embodied. And I felt older, and yet I felt like I had released years. I felt more mature and deeper than I've ever felt, even though I know it's always been there. I felt more still and quiet than I have ever felt. And it felt safe to be here. And what's come out of this are these gifts that you're right, they're not surprises. It's like, oh, I knew you were there. I'm ready now to live this. You know, I've gone through such big changes in my work. I had this moment this year, not long ago, when after this healing that I'd been through, I started looking at my work, my old work. Or it wasn't, when I say old, it was like a month before or 2 months before, and I started lifetime in like frigging transformation.
That's
right?
A lifetime.
So I started looking at the old work, and I was it almost hurt my eyes. I was like, wow, who is that girl in that shiny outfit with that shiny look, and so pretty, and this presentation, and everything was kind of in place. And I was kind of mortified by it. And I was like, I can't feel her. It was like I could see a wall between, what I was allowing myself to be seen and what was being seen. And so I went through this huge shift where I literally wrote to everyone I worked with, and I said, we will no longer put any pretty perfect pictures out. I will only be real from now on. I will only show myself as I am. There will be nothing in my work, in my business that will give anyone the message that you have to be this package. I will not play that game. This work is not about Nikki Clinch. This work is about the work, and I will speak it, but it's not about me. And so something started to shift this year where I was in my maturing. I found more and more courage and at peaceness in myself to let go of the one that needed to be some kind of someone to everyone else. And so I feel more peaceful in that. And you're right, in the stillness and the ease, my business just exploded. It just kept expanding. When you say make the decision, my coach, Susie Ashworth, said to me when I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this edits of this book and then enroll this program? She was like, well, you just have to make the decision to do it with ease. And I was like, oh, you're right. I'm not going to push. I'm not going to hustle. I'm not going to shout, but I will do this. And then like 2 weeks later, and I literally had just sat in this chair. I'd barely said a word. Suddenly we had a full program and I'd done the second edits of the book. And it was like the softer I was, the more at peace I was in myself, the more this life force just went whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Oh, and it was enjoyable.
It had
and it
space.
was and that was the other gift from doing this, I guess, coming more out of the ego and the trauma response. Really the one that wanted to be some kind of someone is the little girl that used to put on the shows and wanted mummy to love her. It was like, if I dance pretty enough, everyone will love me. And I was like, I don't want to dance anymore. I don't need to dance. I can just be here. I just want to be here. And I already know that's enough. And as I started to own that, more people started coming in. I realized, oh, I don't have to do this alone. Actually, when I let more people part of the vision and the dream, everybody benefits, everybody grows, everybody gets something beautiful. And so I've learned about collaboration and team and asking for help and receiving this year. And then one more gift that came out of it was this move. As I dropped deeper into my Asian roots, I realized it was no longer aligned to not have my feet in the sand. I was like, I'm an island girl. I feel like I'm in a box that I didn't choose. And so we're now moving and to be in that nature, and that's that air, that the salty breeze. And so that felt really like a coming home for me. So yeah, you're right. It's not a surprise. It's owning a knowing, or allowing a knowing that's always been there, and to grow into it. I grew out of an old version and I grew into this knowing. Yeah.
100. It's just like when you give yourself that opportunity and you are courageous enough to trust, you're able to tap into your lineage, because all of your lineage is within you. You're able to tap into all of the growth and learning that has occurred throughout human evolution. That's always there. So if we give ourselves the space, anything is possible. Trusting that space, as we said earlier on when we were referring to surrender,
it's like a death.
It can feel like free falling, but it's not free falling. Yeah, literally. But with death, there's birth. And you allow yourself, we allow ourselves, I allow myself to be reborn into the iteration that I need to be right now, and trust and know that I will have another rebirth and another rebirth. I was talking to Reverend Gail Loveshock. I was doing a workshop in one of her programs and talking about when I had my existential crisis at 40, I realized that part of the difficulty and dis-ease I was experiencing in 40, I started to make that in my 20s. And I started to think, actually, for me to have the life that I want to have, if every 20 years, let's say, is a new lifetime, I'm creating my 60s now. I know the 60s I want to have, so I'm living into that now. And when I get to 60, there'll be a different way of living to create the 80s I want to have, for example. But it's just
It's our
that knowing that
destiny.
we are
In
designed
fact,
to evolve.
it will happen despite us. It may happen in this lifetime,
Absolutely.
or it may happen and we have to come around many times. I mean, it literally is our destiny. You know, that in the opening of my book, that's what I begin with. It's like, you know, we are literally the rose seed destined to be the rose. It's just part of nature. We are meant to evolve. But that's the problem. You see, I think that's what this year, this is on, if you zoom out and you look at us on a species level, that's what I see from this year. The energy that is been flowing through this year has been an invitation, a big old push out of the nest to evolve. And you either resist it and it creates this shit fight, excuse my language, extremely painful shit fight, or you surrender, and something dies, and then something surprisingly beautiful just comes through. And I think, you know, we're still in that, but yeah.
And guess what, guys? It's not going to change at
No.
0000 on the 1st of the 1st, 2021. So all of this, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. There's no magic wand that's going to be made available to us on the 31st. And that's something that I really loved about the conversation we had on my podcast about embracing the realness.
The
Embrace the
everydayness,
realness,
you know,
and identify
we talked about
the pleasure
integration
that's there.
and we talked about commitment. That was it. We talked about commitment. Everybody wants the big orgasm. Everybody wants the big explosive transformational experience. But the real evolution happens in the everyday moments of what you choose and how you show up and who you're going to be today. And that's every day until the day we pass. So, you know, you're right. This isn't it. If we've learned anything, this is a new way to be. So, 2 more questions. Is there anything that you need to, or feel ready to, or feel called to release or forgive this year?
The biggest, and it's an ongoing piece of forgiveness work, is to forgive myself for denying myself the pleasure that was all around because it didn't fit into a particular box. I was one of those people that would forever be saying things like, oh no, I'm not going to go to that thing because I'm doing all these calculations. It's going to take me an hour to get there. The event is 2 hours. It's going to take me an hour and a half to get back because that's what the traffic is going to be like. So what I was saying to myself is that I'm not worthy of traveling 2 hours. Forget the amount of time, the event or the occasion, whatever it was. I was denying myself the opportunity to have 2 pleasureful hours full of meaningful connection because I was too busy calculating how long it would take me to get there and get back. Relationships, and I mean relationships full stop, not necessarily romantic relationships, although they are included as well. Being so protective about my vulnerability and sensitivity, not allowing myself to be seen. So I become, and this is from childhood, very adept at being the gatherer. When you're the gatherer, you're standing back a little bit and you're holding your arms open to gather everybody in. So it looks like you're immersed. It looks like you're there with everybody, but you're not, because you're organizing, you're performing a role, you're being the person you need to be to gather these people. So the forgiveness for myself is preventing myself from actually participating in my life, actually having connections with people that included, oh my goodness, I am so filled with joy right now because XYZ, right through to, I don't want to be around you at the moment because it doesn't feel safe. Those two ends of the pendulum are what enable relationships to be the relationships you need them to be, rather than playing around with this surface level thing because you're afraid to be seen as a human. It's not about being seen as weak, but as a human being. So there's a really, and I'm saying it quite matter of factly, but there's a whole load of churning going on. Solar plexus is alive, heart is feeling very warm. There's a whole load of stuff going on. Even my throat instantly is beginning to feel dry. So that's the biggest. Nikki, there's so much forgiveness work I need to do for that. And that's part of the reason that I've decided I'm not doing conveyor belt working. I'm doing 2 programs next year. One's 1 year, the other one is 9 months. And I'll be doing some non-linear sessions here and there. But my focus really is on giving myself space to be whoever it is I need to be during this period of time. And for me, it might sound, for some, it might sound quite straightforward, or it might sound, oh, yeah, I can do that. But the depth at which this forgiveness work needs to happen for me, and when I'm forgiving myself, I'm also forgiving my parents. I'm also forgiving friends. I'm also forgiving a career. I'm also forgiving the education system. I'm also forgiving non-Black friends, so that includes non-Black people of colour, for the ways in which they've traumatized me because of white supremacy and racism they've internalized. I'm forgiving myself. I'm creating space to really look at racism that I've internalized. I'm really, really, there's a massive, great big piece of work. And I'm very good, because I'm used to working at a big capacity, I'm very good at underestimating how much time I need to process and integrate so that it becomes part of me, just like brushing my teeth and washing my face. So I want to give myself the time and space to really reconcile and reclaim those parts I abandoned because it didn't fit into this box that was created for me. I never wanted it, but I didn't know I had an option.
Thank you for your truth. I hear that. Oh, and that is beautiful. Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know what else to say to that, except I want to just give that some space. I see you.
And you know what? I'm not even resisting being seen, so much so. One of the things, I had this experience, you mentioned Susie, I had this experience with Susie Ashworth at her retreat in 2019, where we were doing a heart opening practice.
Yeah.
And part of that, we had to make a yum sound. Yeah. My sound was so huge. We were in this beautiful little chapel. At that time, I mistook it. I don't know if you've watched the cartoon film, The Little Mermaid, and you've got Ursula, the sea witch. So because I had shame about my bigness, I would perceive my bigness as Ursula. And so the bigness was just pouring through, and I was desperately trying to pull it back because I was sharing a space with other people. But through that, this hum just came out of nowhere, and I couldn't stop doing it. And every time I have felt fractious, like I'm literally being pulled apart so that I can disassociate and I can cast off the bits that don't fit into this program. This Mm-hmm. 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 I even feel like I'm going to pour.
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps coming. It just keeps coming and giving me nourishment. And it's like cogs
Yeah.
can connect and they can turn in unison.
Yeah.
I know that's my ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about breaking ancestral chains. Mm-mm.
Yes. Own
My
them, live
truth,
them,
I'm here to
embody
heal
it.
the whole chain.
Yes.
That's big work.
I see your ancestors in you. I really, just as you were singing just now and you were humming, it just rich, deep roots. The A big tree with roots miles and miles down in the earth. I had
Miles.
Jaya John on the podcast as the opening episode, and he was speaking about owning the teachings and the gifts from our ancestors. And I see that now. I see that as our invitation, and that is the gift. If we can live it, own it, speak it, and lead from there. I feel like leadership is the calling here, but a new kind of leadership. Leadership from this place, speaking from the place of roots. Having done the work, forgiveness allows us the opportunity to make whole of the past so that we can speak and live it here and now. No more shutting out, no more resisting, no more cutting off any parts of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean the lineage, the whole lineage. Yeah, beautiful. Well, as you're speaking, as you
What are
spoke,
you
I
forgiving?
realize I too am forgiving myself for being the warrior. I'm even this year, I feel like my body needs so much of my love and care. I really stepped up this year. I stepped up. I supported a family of 4 completely and solely financially supported my family. And I love them, and I feel honored to have done that, and I feel proud of myself to have done that when my husband had to step out to take care of the babies. And I helped a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people this year who were going through the absolute depths, the dark night of the soul, all at once. And I stepped up. And I feel like I have served well. When I think of my calling and I think of Source, I've served well. But my body needs my love and all my love. And so I forgive
Mm-hmm.
myself for choosing to step up and serve, and for my body to be tired. I forgive myself for that, and I have listened, and I'm taking care. I forgive myself for having blocked out deep, deep, vulnerable intimacy of being seen in all my rawness and my messiness and my imperfections. And in doing that, whatever love I have blocked out in the process, I forgive myself as those walls melt and I
Mm-hmm.
let people in deeply. I've lost a lot of friends in the last 1-2 years, but I have gained a small handful of incredibly deep
Mm-hmm.
bonds. People who have seen me in a way I've never allowed myself to be seen. And for me to have 4-5 of those kinds of bonds versus 15,
Mm-hmm.
20 acquaintances, that is rich medicine. And I have just come to a completion of forgiveness with my parents. Years and years of healing work. I had to, my book comes out in June, and it is a deep book, and my parents feature in it. And as part of the final completion process of my healing with them, I had to sit with both of them one by one and read the chapters that they featured in. And it was the first time in my 41 years where I allowed them to really see me in all the wholeness and the bigness of who I am. No more hiding. And as I read the chapters to each one of them, they cried, and they just told me how proud they were, and that how devastated they were that I felt that way once. And it felt like an absolute healing completion process with both. It's like the end of the childhood. So that's what I'm forgiving and continually committing to forgiving. That's the continuous process. And I think I just need to voice as well, I may not feel this way by the time the episode comes out, but I need to forgive London. I know it's a strange thing to say, but I feel like either London or the UK, I feel like my heart broke this year. This is a city I have loved since I was a teenager, running around, getting up to no good. And something in my heart broke this year. Maybe it was a way that I knew it, or a way that I saw it. And with the pandemic and everything that's happened, it was like I don't recognize this place that I once have always known as my home. And so there's healing there for me. I need to bring that healing, and I am bringing that healing with me in this move, so that I can make whole and forgive any kind of heartbreak or disappointment, or letting go, letting down, being let down feelings. I need to hold that and feel it and grieve, and then forgive. Yeah. So that's me. And so I want to finish with one last question. What is your vision?
The vision is to allow myself to be as big as I possibly can be, and then some. That vision, even right now, I can feel my tongue. That vision feels satiating. That vision feels satisfying. So in my work, it means, oh, interesting, look, straight away in my work. Let's flip that a little bit. Personally, that means allowing myself to just be. Just be. It means treating myself like a baby, in that, I mean, with the softness, the gentleness, the being responsive to my cues, preempting my cues, the way we know our babies tend to get hungry around 11:15, so we start preparing the food at 11:45. So being able to preempt and really not just meet my needs, but tend to my needs, nurture my needs, stop being ashamed that I have these needs. My needs are my needs are my needs. That is it. And for me, that will allow me to feel safe to be the person I need to be in my interpersonal relationships. My big vision personally is to allow myself to be intimate the way that I'm feeling, really like it's almost like my sternum is leading me to be intimate. I said it quite flippantly, but I really mean it. If it's not romantic, I don't want it. And we know romance isn't straightforward. It's not easy. We need to keep showing up and showing up and showing up for the romance. So everything, romance is my guide. So I want life to feel romantic. The big vision also is to be even more of a role model to my daughter. I can already see there are things that she accepts as normal that I didn't know were even a thing when I was a teenager. The way she wants to be looked after, the way she moves within the world, the way she is able to express herself. So I want to continue to be a role model for that. And also the big vision. I had a conversation with my mum the other day, and she said, "Yeah, she's on my news. She's on my mailing list, so she gets my newsletters." And she's like, "Yeah, I've really been thinking about the things you say, and I want to be more nurturing." So it's about stepping into that loving leadership, that loving, powerful, nurturing leadership, and being a lighthouse for people. And I'm intentional about being a lighthouse. I want you to guide you to where you need to be so that you can go off and go where you need to go. I don't want all of this, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, or I don't want a system that I see within the wellness industry where thought leaders, people that hold space for people, have people around them operating at the same level. I want to help you grow and be bigger. And if that means that you grow to a place where you've outgrown me, blessings upon blessings upon blessings. The big vision is to be my life, to be a true reflection of what I radiate. Whatever that is what it is. There's not many prescriptions. There we go. I will allow the spaciousness and curiosity to make this a medicinal adventure. I've had so long of thinking, right, I've got to do this by then. I've got to do this in this way. Let me just unfurl and see what happens.
That's my word. I actually wanted it to be the title of the book,
unfurl.
but Hay House wouldn't accept that one for the first book. But it is my favorite. It is my favorite word.
Oh, Hay House. The next one.
If you let go enough, you see, we don't have to find ourselves. We're already there. If we let go enough of what is not ours to carry, of who is not who we are, we unfurl through as nature intended. It's beautiful.
As nature intended.
Oh, I love seeing you. Mm-hmm. I love hearing you. I love witnessing you. Thank you so much. So, go on.
And are you? It's so refreshing and comforting, not in a comfort zone kind of way, to be around people who aren't triggered or threatened by your bigness and actually encourage you to be big because they like bigness too and they appreciate that it's...
Well, thank you. I received
It feels very safe.
I feel attracted by it. Your bigness, Tamu, is safe because it comes from roots. Because I can see that it is absolutely real and authentic, and if anything, it's the beautiful gift of example that our light, our power, when coming from a place of softness and healing, is only safe, and it benefits everyone. It doesn't cut anyone out of the picture. It doesn't hurt anyone along the way. Mm-hmm. When it comes from this place, it's remarkable. It's radiant. That quote, who are we? What is it? We're more afraid of our light than we are of our shadow. Who are we to play small?
Yes, Marianne Williamson. Mm-hmm.
Who are we not to be magnificent, remarkable? Mm-hmm. Who are we not to be big? So yeah, I see your bigness and I welcome it, and I feel inspired by it. It's beautiful. So thank you. Mm-hmm. I want to just have one more question, is that how can my listeners find your groups? These two groups? They sound like they're going to be pretty exclusive, so people better jump in quick. Please share.
Well, one of them,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm going to say it. One of them is an invitation only group. And that is not because I'm trying to create a two-tier system or anything like that. But what I recognize and know is that when you have big, resplendent energy and you hold space for other people, there aren't many places that you can go and feel safe, because the places that are
Mm-hmm.
created in this way are generally created for your clients, for example, Nikki. So you being able to have your dark night of the soul moment and then share what that meant to you, it's not safe for you to do that in a group where people are looking to you for leadership, help, safety. So one of them is, yeah. But the other one, I've
Mm.
actually started inviting people in now, and that one is called Sovereign. And that is a year-long program that begins in January. It's a very embodied somatic program, very spacious, very luxurious. And that begins in January. So I'm hoping that it will be filled by the time this podcast airs. But if it's not, there's that. And then I will be offering, as and when, some exploration salons where we can gather and explore the things we usually shy away from. So yeah, so those are the bits, and you will find that all on my website, which is www.live360.com, and that's all letters, livethree6ty.com.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
Everyone
you.
listening, please go and find Tamu. Listen. Just listen. Listen as long as you can listen. She has a lot of wisdom to share. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Tamu, for sharing
Thank
yourself
you.
with me,
Thank
with
you.
us. I love sitting with you. So this has been an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.